My name is Fernando Rivera. I'm a professor of sociology. I'm also director of the Puerto Rico Research Hub at the University of Central Florida. So happy to be with you here today. One of the things out here, I'm kind of like giving you kind of like a presentation out here, and this is kind of like the summary. So I'll go a little bit on my personal history, the background, sort of the networking and sort of the path that life gives you that put me in this very same moment here, including my educational, professional trajectory. Like I said, I'm a sociologist, so we're looking at, social science research, and sometimes people say, well, what does that have to do with STEM? It does, right, in terms of that, and we'll get into that. And today we'll have a little activity just, so how do we take that scientific method and how do we utilize it to create science and understand the world a little bit better as well. And then I'm going to give you some tips. I've been at UCF for more than 20 years. So I want to make sure that you get a heads up if that's your path. If it's not, it's perfectly fine. Life is not linear. There's little twists and turns out here in terms of that. So I'm going to keep in time and all those type of things. So make sure, so are you ready for kind of like this presentation? So let's start out here. So first question here. Like I said, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and if you don't know, Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth of the United States since 1958, became part of the U.S. in 1898, including Guam and other territories, which is part of sometimes a history that we don't talk out here. But I want to get a sense out here. How far you think this is, from Orlando to San Juan? Any guesses? In miles? How much? How many? 400. 400? A little bit more than that, right?
1,200.
Oh, 1,200, yes. Right on the dot, right? Just about 1,175 or so. So perfect, they're that good guess in terms of that. So I'm showing you this because, one of the things in terms of, how I ended up here in terms of that, and this is where we start with the professional, the personal and professional trajectory out here. So a little bit of history out here, and hopefully you know it or not. But Puerto Rico, in the 1940s, after World War II, there was this big push to make Puerto Rico from a rural type of place, an agricultural type of place, into an industrial urban setting. And that evolution was very, very fast out here in terms of that. So it was kind of like in the 1940s, a period in the history of Puerto Rico that they call the Great Migration. Why I bring that to light? The Great Migration was a period where my grandparents and my mom took off from Puerto Rico. Where do you think people went from Puerto Rico? What was the big draw out here? Which state? It's not Florida. So New York, right? New York City, there was a big parade recently out here with a lot of people out here, a lot of Puerto Ricans in New York, right? But the process out here was, after World War II, there was sort of kind of like this creation of opportunities for a lot of people. They needed workers. They needed to depopulate the island in a sense, so they can do this industrial type of experiment in Puerto Rico. So I came to that. So that was my grandfather was a World War II veteran. Was recruited out of Puerto Rico to go to World War II, and my mom happened to do that. So imagine that you're in a very rural area, you're 6 or 7, and then all of a sudden you get moved to Manhattan, like in the middle of the city out here. So a big transition out here. And I bring this to you because, now we're gonna see some of the evolution that has happened, that I'm kind of like part of that as well. So that's sort of kind of like the beginning in terms of that. I never imagined in a million years that I was going to be here in Orlando, that I was going to be part of this next great migration that is ongoing here. So I went to Catholic school from 1 to 12, all male school, right? A unique type of experience because I went to my whole school experience was with the same group of people, right? So to this day, we kind of like get in touch. We have a WhatsApp group and all that good stuff, right? But one of the things I tell you that because it was a big transition for me going from, you know, a very small all male type of school, then to the different transitions that I had out here. So, I graduated, and I know that some of you, you're probably in like 9th, 10th grade. That's kind of like the average here. All right, so perfect, you know, and are you feeling the pressure that people are telling you, what are you gonna do? What do you wanna be when you grow up and all that good stuff? And, you know, so don't be in a rush to figure stuff out, and don't be in a rush to grow or grow up. You know, it absolutely sucks to grow up, just to put it in that sense. But I went to the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. I don't know how any fellow Puerto Ricans or people with Puerto Rican roots, anybody has visited the island? Yes, you know where Mayagüez is? Mayagüez? Oh yeah, so west of the island here, but we have 11 schools in 11 public universities in Puerto Rico. And this particular one is the engineering school. So I was a social scientist in the engineering school. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the trajectory out here. And the lesson here is the opportunities that you are given and the opportunities that you take, right? So remember I told you I went to Catholic school, all male, all those sort of things. So imagine that then I go to a university and there's girls in the classroom, right? I never had females in my classroom, right? You know, there was all these opportunities, all that sort of stuff. So my first semester I didn't do that well. Not ashamed to say it, but I had a lofty 1.81 GPA my first semester in college, which you know is not high at all, right? This is like not very good, right? To the point that, you know, it was like, you know, I had a conversation with my parents and said, well, maybe college is not for you, right? But it's going through those transition periods in terms of that. That is the lesson here. So what happened? My second year kind of like turned around and started doing some work. And so kind of like the power of research and the power of mentorship as well. So what happened? In my second year at the university, I take my first introduction to sociology course. And that professor, you know, said like, hey, I have this research center and I'm looking for students to do some type of research. Let's do it, right? So I sign up, and that professor now is the president, the first Puerto Rican Hispanic president of the State University of New York in Albany. So that was kind of like sort of, obviously at that time I didn't know that was going to happen, but he's taking care of those opportunities out there. So from there, and taking care of all those opportunities and doing the research, I ended up in Nebraska. Anybody knows where Nebraska is? All right, it's in the Midwest out here, but I'll show you kind of like the map. This is kind of like the trajectory out here. So I went from a Caribbean island, right, to the middle of the United States, right? If you don't know, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Wyoming, Colorado, and Kansas, kind of like surrounded out here in terms of that. So I did kind of like, you know, some of the opportunities out there. There was a summer program that I took from the National Science Foundation, kind of research undergrad experience, which are great programs that they have out there. Happened to know the faculty. It was a great summer. I ended up going to Nebraska. I still go to Nebraska. I actually have a precious souvenir for Nebraska, which is my 23-year-old son that was born in Nebraska out there. So, after I did my master's, you know, because I was rushing through, right? So I did kind of like high school, college, did my master's, and then I wanted to take a break. So I went back to Puerto Rico. So I'm a big baseball fan. But I'm 22, so that's kind of like Asian in baseball, right? So this was my big plan at 24 years old. I wanted to become a Major League Baseball umpire. And that was the plan, right? At 24, that was my plan, going back to Puerto Rico. And they're actually an umpire school here in Daytona, anybody that wants to do that. The thing about umpires in Major League is that they don't retire. So it's very, very hard to get a position out there if you're able to go through the ranks and all those type of things. So I was doing that. So in the meantime, I was working at a record store. Probably you don't know what a record store is because you're kind of like the iPhone and the iMusic generation, but this was a place where they had CDs and cassette tapes and all sort of stuff, and you kind of like sold those, and that was what was happening out there. But remember that professor, the one I took the intro to sociology? So now he's a dean at the school. And he said, well, I heard that you're around, would you want to teach at the university? So I went back and I taught for 2 years at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, right? And again, it's kind of like the networking, the opportunities that you take out here. So, check this out. In that summer, I was working at a record store. I was single, and in 2 weeks, I met my future wife of 26 years now, and came back to the path of higher education. Just in one summer because I took advantage of those opportunities. So after that, I took a postdoc, and a postdoctoral position is kind of like a research position after you finish your PhD, which is your terminal degree in any profession out there. So it's more specialized. So I went to New Jersey. Any Northeastern people here? No, New Jersey? No Jersey. There's a lot of New Jerseyans in Florida as well. So I ended up going to Rutgers University in New Jersey. So I came from being one of the few to one of the many out here in terms of the context out here. So after that, I ended up at the University of Central Florida where I am. And even with that, my job at the University of Central Florida, one of my colleagues and one of the grad students in my cohort at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln was the first one that got a job at UCF. He got the job at UCF and he said, hey, they're looking for people, would you like to apply? And I did. And again, some of those opportunities. And another story about what's happening at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So remember, I came from Puerto Rico, right? If you haven't visited, please do. Have it in your summer plans out there. So surrounded by water, beautiful tropical island, all sort of things. I remember the first time I saw snow. It was so exciting. It was great, right? I don't know, how many of you have seen snow? All right. Have you lived through it? Yeah, so the ones that have lived through it, you know, snow is nice at the beginning, but then it melts. It becomes slushy. You have to clear stuff up. It becomes ice. You fall. And I remember kind of like one time just walking around and then looking up at the ceiling because I slipped and I felt, and you know, kind of like that black ice that you don't see in terms of that. But I remember we having our orientation of all the new students, right? And they say, hey, who's still trying to has problem with, you know, getting an apartment and stuff like that. So they were like, you know, the African American kid and myself, right? And that was a big learning moment for me about learning about other groups and other cultures and all sort of stuff. And kind of like the same thing, right? So my roommate is now president of the Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. So for some reason, you know, you never know, right? One of the lessons out here, you never know where you're going to end up, who are going to be the people that you're going to meet, and the trajectories out here in terms of that. All right. How are we doing so far? I know it's kind of early in the morning, kind of like following up. We're doing good on time. But this was kind of like my trajectory. It's kind of like a 4 in reverse, I don't know, for some reason out here in terms of the shapes out here. But this is kind of like my professional educational trajectory out here in terms of that. So one of the things that I want to, I've been here at UCF for 20 years, right? Why did I want to come to Florida? You know, why was it so appealing in terms of that outside of the weather and all those type of things? If you don't know, for a long time, Puerto Ricans have been coming to Florida. Since 2006 or so, with the economic struggles of the island, a lot of people started coming to Florida. So when I got to UCF in 2005, probably a lot of you were not even born yet, there was a large, you see kind of like the demographic trajectory that was going on out there. But a big thing that I want to kind of like revisit out here, and it's been almost 8 years now, was the impact of Hurricane Maria, not only in Puerto Rico, for this region as well. And you know, what led to my latest professional endeavor as well. So these are pictures that I took when I visited the island, and this was in February of 2018. And so we're talking the storm was in September 20th, 2017. So this is probably like 5 months after, and still you could visibly see the damage that was happening out here. This is off the coast of Rincon in terms of that. So just, it resulted in almost 3,000 lost lives. Think about this. It's getting hot in Florida, right? You know, how many of you don't have AC, air conditioning? All of you have air conditioning. I mean, actually, there's the boom in the population in Florida started with the creation of the AC in residential homes, right? Because it's kind of hard to live here without AC. But in Puerto Rico, kind of like this storm wiped out the electric grid, and on average, there were 84 days without electricity. Imagine that, and Puerto Rico is not out there in terms of that. So a major storm out here in terms of that. So one of the things that led out here in terms of that, and kind of like push my efforts, and kind of like some in terms of faith in a sense, you know, I happened to be at the right place at the right time to create this, which is I'm the director of, and we started in 2018. And this was a direct result from Hurricane Maria. So basically, after Hurricane Maria, a lot of people came here in terms of that. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the UCF response out here in terms of that. But if you're interested in ever, you know, if you come to UCF and you wanna work, even if you don't come to UCF, just let me know, and we can talk a little bit more about the research center out here in terms of that. So, one of the things, you know, kind of like going back to recapping a little bit of the history, what happened at UCF was that they were giving in-state tuition for the students that were displaced. And basically that allowed a lot of students to come to UCF, a lot of minds and hearts were changed, and I was able to push this through in terms of that. And I happen to inform like some of the students that actually were displaced that came to UCF after Hurricane Maria. Right now, they have been graduating, they're doctors, like medical doctors in Puerto Rico. You know, so you see kind of like the advantage of that. But, you know, remembering this, and this was a student-led effort. These were students that got their minds and heads and put together, and they did this to really extend the in-state tuition till 2023 at that time, not only one semester, waived the application fee, and they were able to finish their degree, a very highly successful type of program in terms of that. All right. So to the point out here, right? So let's talk a little bit about social science research. But to begin that, when we talk about science, what is usually the image that you have when we think about science? How would you picture a scientist? Yes?
Like chemistry, like
Exactly, right? What else? Yes?
like the environment.
In the environment, yes, all those type of things, right? And you might have a microscope, like a lab coat, all those type of things in terms of that. But today I want to tell you a little bit about social science research the activity that we're gonna have, I'm gonna try to make you think as a social scientist. I'm gonna pronounce you like social scientist for like 20 minutes after we do the activity. But think about it. Think about, how do we utilize the scientific method out here to do social science research, right? And in a sense, what the social science research, it studies human behavior and society. So even if you don't know, you're actually participating in social science research right now. How many of you have cell phones? All right, how many of you have Snapchat? How many of you have the tracking thing where you know where your friends are? And your activities and all sort of stuff, right? And even if you don't have it on, it's on in terms of that. All right, how many times have you taken a survey or answered a question or anything like that? So willingly and willingly, you're being a participant out here. But think about it. Last time you went to any store, what is on the receipt? If you take a survey for a gift card, tell us about our experience, right? So there's ongoing data that is being manufactured out there, because what do they want to know? Why do they want to know? Why do they want to track you? Because they can understand your behavior, right? Even though, privacy is out the door, there's another discussion out here in terms of that, but we continue to do that in terms of that, right? So how do we do this, right? Not only by, using technology, but we can observe, we can interview, we can analyze data and all sort of stuff. I remember when I was in grad school, one of the observations was to go to a theme park or go to a zoo or go to some type of public place, and you sat down and you saw the interactions of parents. And basically said, what does mom do in the park and what does dad do in the park? And you can take that, so I'm planting that seed of that sociological imagination in terms of that. And basically who takes care of that. And there's been a long evolution out there. I could tell you even when I had my son 23 years ago, there were no changing tables at the men's bathroom, right? Even if I wanted to, I couldn't, because the tables were in the women's bathroom. Right? So I couldn't even do that. But after more research and all sort of thing, the application, and I could tell you a little bit about the applications and all sort of things. So today you're gonna learn the scientific method, right? And this is what we're gonna talk about for the next half hour or so. And we're gonna have a little activity, and I'm gonna give you some tips in terms of that. So these are the steps, and I have an article that is back there in a folder that we can distribute out there. I think is right there. So I'm gonna share the other one, the article per se. So I'm gonna give you an example before we do the activity, right? And basically, this is just the first page out here and of some of the research that I did. That is the example that we're gonna use today. And everybody can keep a copy out there in terms of that. If you're interested in looking at that, that's perfectly fine in terms of that. But basically, I'm gonna use that example and tell you all the steps with that scientific method, and that's gonna be the activity today. All right. So while we distribute, how are we doing? We're doing okay? One of the things that you do in the class is break it up so we can get people awake and stuff like that. Anything going on in the world today? In terms of your lives, anything like that? Today's Thursday, we're about to begin the weekend, right? Any plans for the weekend?
Yeah.
Anybody, no plans? Yes, you should do that, although it's gonna rain, but go early in the morning and stuff like that. All right, awesome. So now you have an article out here, right? So this is part of my dissertation work. And this is since, the data came from funded U.S. source is part of the Library of Medicine collection. So actually you can type it in and you can get it for free through the Library of Medicine, the U.S. Library of Medicine out here. I'm a sociologist, I'm contributing to medicine out here in terms of that. So we'll go through all the steps out here and tell you a little bit more of the things that we're doing. I'm trying not too much, I'll move, but relatively not too much in terms of that. But as you can see, kind of like going back to the steps, the research question. And the research question in any study that you do is probably the hardest part of it, right? How do you come up with a research question? And kind of like sort of a preview that I want you to understand. I want you today, what we're gonna do, have a research question out there of the observation of your everyday life, right? And this came from a hunch out here in terms of that. So my research question out here for this article, what is the relationship between acculturation and psychological well-being? So remember, it kind of like fits a pattern, right? In terms of, I came from Puerto Rico all the way to Nebraska, right? A new context out here in terms of that. So I was drawing from my experience, right? All of a sudden, this is a completely different thing. I love Nebraska, by the way. Nothing wrong with that. Take the opportunities. Love the Cornhusker. We have football fans. Scott Frost used to be quarterback for University of Nebraska Lincoln, and actually in my time when I was there, and they were national champs, all those sort of things. But basically I wanted to see, okay, kind of like what's happening to me, is it happening to everybody out here? So basically, kind of like looking at acculturation. And acculturation, basically what it means, right? You go into a new context, a different context that you have in terms of your culture, the way you were brought up, the relationships that you have. Do you adapt to the new culture, or you keep some of those components out here? And kind of like some of the literature said, which is the second step, kind of like looking at the background research, if you sort of assimilate or acculturate to the new culture, then you should have better mental health. On the opposite side, when you do this, maybe you have to draw away from some of the things that actually help you with your own cultural background, and that way, you might have an inverse relationship out there. So what I wanted to know, and kind of like the hypothesis that I wanted to have, was just to understand, is there a direct relationship between acculturation and depression? And if you have higher acculturation, is it associated with higher levels of depression, right? That was sort of the study out here, and I'm going to show you some of the mechanisms and all sort of things in terms of utilizing the scientific method out here and putting it into perspective out here. So how do you text this, right? And obviously at this time there was no social media, there was no, in terms of that, and I'll tell you a little bit of the impact of the research we've done so far. But this was actually data from Florida. I was in Nebraska, but the data came from Florida. And again, kind of like I was part of another program within my national association. And basically, I got access to this data out here in terms of that. And it was a sample of Latino students here, or young adults here in Miami-Dade County in terms of that. We talked a little bit about how we conceptualize acculturation, but we also use kind of like a measure of depression, right? And basically, this is not necessarily a clinical type of a measure that says, you're depressed or not. You have symptoms of depression out here in terms of that. They don't feel like eating, not at all, 4 to most of the time, and we create a scale in terms of that. All right, so far so good? Kind of like makes sense now? You're being polite and saying yes. It's like, oh, this guy's so boring. In terms of that, I'm very friendly. I don't take myself too seriously, but in terms of that. Okay, so I'm going to show you a table, right? And basically, don't be afraid out here in terms of that. But one of the things, we do utilize math, stats, all that good stuff in social science research as well. right? And so don't be afraid of math, don't be afraid of numbers, don't be afraid of statistics in terms of that. So basically, I'm just gonna show you two very simple models out here, right? Basically, remember the hypothesis? What was the hypothesis? Yes? Huh?
An educated guess.
Huh?
An educated guess.
Yes, all right, yeah, all right. All right, so in the first one, so the model one was like, okay, is there a relationship between acculturation and symptoms of depression? We run the statistical model. I won't go into the details of it, but it was significant, right? Basically, high acculturation led to more depressing symptoms out here in terms of that. That's why it's kind of like a positive relationship out here in terms of that. But one of the things, okay, so there's an association between two variables out here. We want to make sure that that relationship holds if we put in some control variables, right? And basically we put in, your age, whether, gender, whether you were US born, your education, marital status, ethnicity, financial situation, all those type of things. And what do you know in model 2? The relationship holds is still significant at the 0.05 level in terms of that. So, it remains in terms of that. All right, so I ran my study, I ran the things that I had out there, and then I have to draw a conclusion. So I conceptualize everything out there, review the literature, all those type of things, and basically there's support for my hypothesis. And then after that, you communicate your results, which is the final step out here in terms of that. And usually what happens, you publish this, and it's put out there. One of the questions when, I was doing kind of like this practice run in terms of that, what is the impact of this, right? So I published this in 2007. So this article has been used to refine interventions with Latino kids, to really use it as a turning point for other studies that have looked at this. Some of my research have been used in Supreme Court cases as amicus briefs of the Supreme Court for actual legal precedents out here. More recently, part of the work that we've done as the Puerto Rico Research Hub, we did a Puerto Ricans in Florida study. And the results of that study were used when we visited the legislature this year. There's a Puerto Rico at Tallahassee event at the Capitol in Tallahassee. And those results were used for the policy setting discussion that we had with different elected officials, heads of the different agencies out there. And if you want to know, the big topics were cost of living, the economy, education, all those type of things that are top of mind for a lot of people. So my little humble social science research has led to all these changes, not only in psychological interventions, Supreme Court cases, but also legislation, which is what we intend to do. Alrighty, so now it comes the activity. So what I want you to do, so we're gonna move around a little bit, and we have roughly about 10 minutes to do this. So I'm gonna assign you a number. Let me count how many people are here first. And I'll do it really quick out here. I'm gonna say roughly 30 people, so I'll do 6 groups of 5. So this is the way we're gonna do it. So you're gonna move around, so I'm gonna give you a number. So you're gonna be 1, you're gonna be 2, you're gonna be 3, you're gonna be 4, you're gonna be 5. And remember your numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember your numbers out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to my friend here in the corner. You're 5. The 4 with the 4s. Let's move up. Let's open those eyes. Let's get some energy going. All right, ones with the ones, two with the twos. Let's do it. Come on. All right, so I had another paper that we can distribute as well.
Números por mesa, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4.
Como quiera.
Okay, number 1 in this table.
Yes.
Number 2 in this table. Number 3 in this table. Number 4 in this table. Number 5 in this table. Number 1 here. Number 1 here. Sabrina. Number 2. David, number 3.
Number 2 here. Number 2.
Number 4. Number 1 here. Number 1. Number 2.
Well, 1, 2.
Number 3. 3. 4. Number 5.
Move out there and have your group out there. I need a volunteer to take notes. And you're going to be the reporter for your group. So basically what I want you to do, you can decide, yeah. You have a question or you? All right. So you should have a pen, you should have a paper, and in the paper it says question and hypothesis. So in the next 5 to 6 minutes, I want you to come up with a research question. And I want you to come up with a hypothesis. And it could be anything that you observe from your everyday life, anything that you're curious about, and we can have that conversation, all right? So your task, a question and a hypothesis. I gave you the example, right? I had this idea that higher levels of acculturations were related to higher levels of depression, right? So very basically I wanted to know that association, right? But think about your everyday type of stuff, right? In terms of differences by group, differences by gender, it could be differences by ethnicity, it could be any type of social phenomena out there that you want to discover. But I don't only want you to come with a question, but I want you to see what is your hypothesis? What do you think is going on? And let me tell you, those hunches have been what I've been studying for my career, right? In terms of that. One of the things as a sociologist, I want to know not only the individual phenomena, but I want to understand, if this phenomena is generalizable to everybody. So, let's give you about 6 minutes to do that. So let's begin, and I'll walk around if you have any questions and stuff like that. But one per table. Talk among yourself. Decide what is going to be the research question. Decide what is going to be the hypothesis. So let's begin. Okay. So now I got you talking. Some people are worried, oh my God, I don't have a question. What am I going to do? All those type of things. And that's perfectly fine. So a couple of things with the exercise. And I'll go with, what was the major challenge to come up with a research question? Anybody? What was the challenge to come with a research question?
Coming up with a question.
Huh?
Coming up with a question.
Question. So that's one, right? What else? You're working with other people, right? So creating consensus is another challenge, right? Yeah, because everybody, might have had a different idea and all sort of stuff, right? All right, so we have only like 10 minutes to go in terms of that. Was anybody able to come up with a research question? Yes? No? No? Yes? Oh, yes! All right.
So our question was, is there a relationship between ethnicity and college acceptance rates?
Very good. And what's your hypothesis?
There is a relationship between ethnicity and college acceptance rates.
All right, but which way is the relationship? What do you think is going on? One group has more likelihood to do that. We won't get into the nitty gritty, but yeah. So, but you're saying that it's going to affect your acceptance status, and then you will look at the literature, and you will see what's been done in the past, and kind of like formulate your idea a little bit better. So awesome. Anybody else came with a research question?
Take it to me.
Now? Yes. All right. Yeah.
Our question was, how does screen time impact children's behavior?
Very good. So the question was, how does screen time impact children's behavior?
And our hypothesis was, if kids spend more time on a device, that can affect their behavior negative or positive.
Exactly. So you're saying that more time is going to affect you negatively, your behavior in terms of that. And remember, you have to define, what is a healthy time? Obviously, it's in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, all those type of things. And actually, it's good. This research question is good because there's a lot of research, so you can do your background search and do all those type of things. You can do a content analysis, and you can do all those type of things, right? Alrighty, so they gave me the 5 minute. I think we have 5 minutes. All right, so let me confess. Coming up with the research question is the hardest step of any type of research endeavor. Don't feel bad and I'm asking you to come up with it in 3 minutes, so don't feel bad. This is just an exercise to start thinking you about the scientific method and all sort of stuff, right? Because sometimes you might have an idea that you think is great, but you go to the literature review, you said like, you know what, this has been researched so many times. What am I contributing that is new? What am I contributing that is different, right? So that's why you have all those steps in terms of looking at that. But sometimes we think it's more simple than we imagine in terms of that. So I want to make sure so hopefully I sparked something in you that you can see sort of the value of social science research, even if you want to be an engineer, even if you want to be a doctor, even if you want to do math or go into a very technical science-based type of things, right? Most of my students that I work with come from biomedical sciences, and they do social science research. And basically they confront those type of things. So this is something that is going to help you. But I just want to real quick tell you a little bit about university. How many of you are thinking about going to college? Good. Anybody wants to go to UCF? Yes. All right. So there's different pathways and all sort of stuff. So I wanted to give you kind of like a little bit of the organizational structure out here, so you learn how complicated the university system is. So it's not. Universities have a president. The president handles everything, outside, inside, from groundskeeping to athletics to all those sort of stuff. The one that you need to know more and that people don't know about is the provost. The provost handles all the academics, right? So if you look at kind of like the organizational structure of a university, here's the student, here's the faculty, here's the chair of the department, the chair reports to the dean reports to the provost reports to the president reports to the board of trustees reports to the board of governors, the board of governors reports to the governor, because this is a public university, right? So that's the organizational structure in terms of that. But in between that, there's a lot of offices that are designed to help you through your journey out here, from housing to athletics, to financial aid, to student success, all those type of things. And remember, if you want to do research, here's some steps, and this is going to be available to you in terms of that, if you want to go through that journey. I've taken, this year, all the students that work with me, I make sure that they travel to Puerto Rico. So even, if you want to do social science research and you stick with me, that's one of the things that I'll make sure that I let you have that experience out here. Because those research is a high impact practice, right? And there's a lot of emphasis right now in terms of that. It's going to make, whatever you do is going to make you better in terms of that. So some useful links out here, you can go to admissions. There are admissions office that can tell you all the requirements, all that you need to know. If you right now are not ready, perhaps, it's not your time to go directly into UCF right now. Here we have the Direct Connect program as well. So you can go into any of our community, our college system, like Valencia and Seminole State. You can do your AA, which is, your advanced, I forgot what AA starts from, but basically you can do that transfer. So if you graduate from there and you meet the requirements, you get acceptance to UCF automatically, right? So there's different paths out here in terms of that. And obviously, in kind of like one of the lessons out here, and I have 1 minute left in terms of that, your path is somewhere out there. And it's up to you. You're going to be given a lot of opportunities. And a lot of opportunities are going to be given, and it's going to be up to you if you're going to take advantage of some or not. Right? But don't feel that you have a pressure out here that there's a linear path to success. There's different paths out there in all those type of things. Perhaps today I changed your life. I hope so. I said like, oh, that crazy dude that came out here kind of like got me interested in this social science research. Maybe I want to do that and get a career out of it, right? Maybe say like, I don't want to do that type of research, and that's perfectly fine. But as you are young, and now opportunities are going to be given to you, right? But don't fall into the trap, right? Do you get those texts that say like, I saw your resume and I want you to apply for like 25 hours, $25 an hour and all sort of stuff? That's not going to happen. Nobody's going to text you with your dream job. You have to go out there, have ambition, and get it in terms of that. And there's, be grateful that you're taking advantage of this opportunity, that there's groups like the ones we have out here that are really looking out for your future, and they want to make sure that you're successful in terms of that. Don't be in a rush to grow up, right? And I know it's kind of hard because you get exposed to a lot of the things, but you have to have a balance between the two in terms of that. But don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of success. I'm a baseball fan. So I don't know how many of you are baseball fans or know and understand. In baseball, if you bat 300, and that's my timer, if you bat 300, you're a success. Think about that. That means that out of 10 times that you step up to the plate, you miss 7. You don't get on base, you don't do anything 7 times out of 10. You only do it 3 times, you're an all-star. You do it 2 times, you're gonna get a contract 1, you're going back to the minor leagues. But it's, the mentality that, sometimes it's about those opportunities and be consistent and not, shoving off, kind of like that failure and moving on in terms of that. You could be an all-star reading 3 out of 10 out there. It's impossible to be 10 out of 10 all the time in terms of that. But it can be achievable. Take advantage of those opportunities that are given to you. I've been a long time in academics, and I know that opportunities, as you grow older, you have less opportunities out there. So this is your time to really reflect on that. Again, don't be in a rush to do that. Basically, there's a lot of resources out here that we have, and just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk to you out here in terms of that. And again, if you ever need something, just send me an email. And it's very simple, fernando.rivera@ucf.edu. I might not have all the answers, but I'll make sure that you get the answer that you're looking for. And it's been a pleasure, and I hope you have a great summer. And it's great to be here today. So thank you so much. I don't know if anybody's coming up here. So. Okay.
Questions? Do you have questions for the doctor? Maybe the scholarship for the...
Well, you have to, look at, there's a lot of scholarship opportunities out there. And unfortunately, sometimes people do not apply to them. And it's just a matter if you find those opportunities and you actually apply for them, there's a high likelihood that you might get them. So, you know, again, don't be afraid of failure. The only thing that could happen is that they say no. And that's not terrible. That's not that terrible.
Una pregunta en español. Desde la high school, ¿es posible entrar en el mundo de la investigación en la universidad?
Claro. Claro.
In English.
Oh, so the question was if you're in high school and you want to do research, is it a path? Definitely. I know, like I was sharing, I have had high school students interview me for some of the research that they were doing. So definitely, that's a pathway that we want to create in terms of that. You know, it's not too early to engage in research. See, here's my witness out here. He's going to do some research out here in terms of that. But again, and remember, you know, at some point, what I want you to get is that, you know, be a fan of learning, but be a fan of also questioning the world, in a sense, right? So create that imagination early on. And it not might be formal research, right? But don't take things at face value, right? I think we have so much access to information nowadays that even like single things, like sometimes I hear something and I'll do the fact checking on myself. So start getting that research mentality out there, you know. What has been done in the past, you know, where's the evidence for those type of things? So if you have that mentality, you definitely have a career out here. And maybe academics is not your role, but you know, there's a lot of applied settings that they do value this kind of skills. You know, when you go to the theme parks, there's always somebody with a notepad and say like, hey, how was the chicken today? And you know, there's a lot of information out there because there's a lot of applications for this, for marketing, for sales, for programs, for policy, all those type of things. So yeah, do research, start now.